mentioned yesterday, but to some people at least, that when this book came out, so many Godzilla fans wrote to the press, which is here in the Minneapolis University of Minnesota Press. They wrote to my editor and said, "Oh my God, we're so happy that this is coming out! Yay! We hope that you're going to do the Mothra book next." And so the editor wrote to me and he's like, "Jeffrey, tell me about this Mothra book. What do you know about this? Are you interested in Mothra?" And I'm like, "Yes, of course I am." So we started negotiations and some talk about translating the book in which Mothra, the film, is based. This book, Godzilla, was written after the film came out, written by the same guy who wrote the screenplay. But in the case of Mothra, the book came first and then was adapted into a film. And there's been no English translation yet. So anyway, I just finished it and submitted it to the editor. We're negotiating for the rights right now. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, please cross your fingers for me. I'm hoping that it will come out in the not so distant future. The book, because the book Mothra came before the movie, there are lots of differences between the book and the movie. Like a lot of changes were made in the book adapting it. So there's a whole bunch of fun stuff in there. But I think one of the funnest things in the Mothra book is that there is a kind of explanation of the mythology behind that existed on the small island where Mothra comes from. And so we get this kind of exploration of world building that is really interesting. Here's a passage. You're the first people ever on the planet to hear this. So this is a passage in which one of the characters, by the name of Fukuda, is talking about his experiences on this strange island out in the South Pacific where Mothra comes from. He's been talking to some local population and learning about their local mythology. It seemed that the local native population had lived with a particular notion of time that went beyond anything Fukuda knew to be real. The local population didn't seem to distinguish between mythological time and time in the current world. When he was a student, Fukuda had been particularly fascinated by comparative mythology and ethnology. In the eyes of primitive, uncivilized people like these, the world belonged to them, and to them alone. They kept so much to themselves that the whole world thought that infant island was uninhabited, at least until the country of Godzilla started its hydrogen bomb tests. It seemed that at some point in the distant past, the people of Infant Island had lost contact with the other islands in the Pacific and had been living there, isolated ever since. The mythology that they shared with Fukuda was quite unusual, so as he listened, he tried to take down as much as possible. At the root of the island's mythology was this story. Long ago, when this world was still chaotic and undefined, the first being ever to appear was the god Ajima, who ruled over the eternal night. He took the things which muddy the world and flow along, things like mist and clouds, and pushed the ones with heavy moisture downward while lifting the light ones high above. In that way, the sea and the sky were born. Ajima then lifted something heavy from the bottom of the sea, the ground in other words, and created two islands. Exhausted from all this work, Ajima lay down on the island that was nothing but sand. Before long, he was fast asleep and snoring. From his snoring, thunder, violent winds, and tsunamis were born. On the islands ruled by this god, eternal night prevailed. He had created the sky, sea, and islands, but he quickly found himself bored, so he split his own body down the middle. The right half of his body was reborn in the same form as before, becoming the same god Ajima, who he had always been. The left half, however, was reborn as the goddess Ajigo. The goddess Ajigo ruled over the daytime. She created the sun. As she breathed over the land, the grass, the trees, birds, and beasts were born. When she breathed over the sea, fish and other creatures of the sea were born. Out of a sense of rivalry, the god Ajima created the moon and stars. However, eventually the two found themselves worn out from all the work of creation, so eventually they lay down to sleep. Before long, a gigantic egg was born from their intimacy. Like the things which the god and goddesses had created on their own, this egg was born from both of them, so it had characteristics of both day and night. It shone like the sun and it glowed like the moon. This egg was called Mothra, but it did not hatch, no matter how long people waited. Next, a male and female couple were born from Ajima and Ajigo. Using their own abilities, these humans began to increase their number until the entire island was overflowing with humanity. Next, a gigantic number of extremely tiny eggs were born from the god and goddess. These eggs glittered like the stars. The eggs turned into larvae, into chrysalises, and into moths, which flitted about in the air. The male god Ajima became convinced that it had been a mistake on the part of the female goddess Ajigo to have given birth to so many tiny eggs, so he flew into a rage. He cast death down upon the world. He cast it down upon everything, upon humanity, on the beasts, on birds and the fish, killing half of everything. Ajima was still so furious that he broke his body into 4 pieces. The island rumbled and parts of it collapsed. The 4 parts of his body flew into the sky, joining the dawn stars, the night stars, the northern stars, and the southern stars in the heavens. The goddess Ajigo was despondent. As she lamented, she decided to offer her own body as a living sacrifice to Mothra, the egg of the infinite. So she came before it and split her body into 4 parts and died. From those 4 parts, 4 tiny young girls were born, 4 fairies, each less than half the length of an ordinary human being. Their entire bodies glowed, even in the middle of the night. These tiny fairies were called Airena, and as maidens in the service of Mothra, the egg of the infinite, they had eternal life. When the larvae that had hatched previously from the countless small eggs formed their own cocoons, they took the thread and wove it into clothing for themselves. Thank you. The threads in that clothing also glowed like phosphorus in the night. Before she died, the goddess Ajigo uttered a prophecy. The Airena fairies will serve Mothra, and Mothra will be sure to protect this island. So, there we go. One of the fun things about this is that I think many people, us Mothra fans love the 2 little fairies, But in the original book, there's actually 4 of them, so you get, twice as many, double the fun. Yeah. So, anyway.
Can I just say I understand why most of that didn't make it to the film?
Right. Yeah, it's kind of discursive. I think it'd be hard to fit that into the film somehow.
To clarify, the book did come before the movie?
The book